Hello guys, welcome to that 1870s Homestead. My name is Rachel. If you just found us, welcome. I had a huge score, and this is probably only half of it, of a bunch of mason jars. So they just got washed. I need to get them put away. And if you are just getting into the idea of canning, maybe you're stocking up, when it comes time to use your jars, save your boxes. They make excellent storage containers. Then for your empty jars, you can stack your boxes on top of each other. And so I'm getting all these loaded up because I need my space. Today I'm sharing garden planning with you. Kind of specifically, what am I growing this year? But then just a few tips to help you think through garden planning if you are brand new to gardening. So let me get some of these out of my way, and then maybe at the end we'll do a quick, maybe we'll do a quick pantry update. So if you guys are new to my channel, I'll describe my garden situation. So my garden started out as just bare grass, like a grass field. And I laid down cardboard and built, I think, 6 or 8 raised beds the first year. And that became my garden. This is not going to be to scale. As much as I try every year, I always don't get it quite right. And then the next year, I added 2 in-ground beds. And the next year, I added 2 more in-ground beds. And then the next year, I connected the 4 in-ground beds. And I'll show you what I'm talking about when I get done drawing it, so you guys can see what I'm saying. My garden is a 40 by 40 space, a little over maybe, since we added the new fence last year. But it can grow a ton of food. And if you think about the size of your average urban backyard, very similar in scale. Okay, so this is kind of my built-in earth beds. And then I have, it's not gonna quite fit, and I'm not gonna be able to do it exactly to the right measurements. But then I have 8 raised beds inside. Actually, I took 2 of them out last year, and we did, remember the straw bale gardens? So I haven't quite decided what I'm going to do this year, if I'm doing straw bale gardening again, but I know what I'm at least planting in the space. Okay, so 1 bed, 2 beds, and then I'm gonna build the rest of them, and then we'll get into talking about what am I planting and why, where. So the first thing I'm gonna tell you about garden planning is you're gonna be really, really excited to grow it all. And it is so fun and so tempting to just grab all the seeds and grow it all. Or starts. Oh my goodness, I'm the worst when I go to a greenhouse in the spring and I just want all the starts. But what you really need to think about is growing what your family loves to eat. Because the last thing you want to do, like I did one time, is grow an eggplant and then learn you don't really like eggplants. And then you have all these eggplants. So I learned that the hard way, just over time, playing with things and being like, Rachel, just stick to the basics. Stick with what you know. And I know what my family enjoys eating because that's what we would always buy at the grocery store. Carrots, peas, spinach, pasta sauces, salsas, lots of tomato products, potatoes, sweet potatoes, carrots, green beans. And once I just self-reflected and said, what am I buying all the time that I want to stop buying? It really helped me become a better garden planner. And the one common question I get every single year, especially from new gardeners, is how do you know how much to grow? And I will tell you that that just comes with keeping a garden journal. It really does. Until I started tracking how much I was able to can based off how much I grew every year, I knew how much I needed to add to it next year. So if you're a beginner gardener, I would just say double it. In some cases, honestly, what you think you need, you might need to 10 times that. Example, peas. If you think you're going to grow enough peas by planting 5 pea plants, you'd be lucky if you had enough for the garnish on a salad. It takes a lot of pea plants to get peas, enough peas to put up. So I guess it depends too on what your intention is. If you want to just grow a garden for the purposes of eating in season, you might not need as large of a garden as those of us that are gardening to put up and preserve to get us through till the next year, so we don't have to depend on the grocery store. So I have shared for the last several years that I do a basic staples garden. If you think about the staples that you need in your pantry, that is what my garden is. Not a lot of fluff, but it's still beautiful, it's still pretty, it's still fun, but there's no fluff to it. It's the basics. So let me just share with you, I'm going to tell you what I'm growing where, how much and why, and maybe that'll give you some good ideas. So last year, every year I grow corn. I say, that's it, I'm never growing corn again. Well, we're growing corn again. So this whole plot, and this is a 6 foot by about 22 foot space, is all corn. Yay! The thing is these westerly winds that drive across our pasture knock it down every single year. I'm gonna see if Todd and I can come up with something that helps secure it this year. But I fell in love. We're not big corn eaters, but I canned my own corn last year for the first time, and I love homemade or home canned corn. Now I only canned maybe 6 or 8 pints of it, and I still have, like, I think I've used 2 or 3. So that tells you how little corn we eat. But from the corn cobs, I made my own corn syrup, and that was to die for. So I'm primarily doing it for the corn syrup, to be honest with you. But we will have some great fresh corn on the cob during the summer and canned corn to put up on the pantry shelves. All right. Here is tomatoes. Now you guys saw my tomato explosion last year. If you didn't see that, I'll link. We have a complete tomato growing playlist because we have just done, I've learned and grown so much in growing and preserving tomatoes that last year was just, I don't know if it was a freak year, to be honest with you. I'm still, in my decade learning journey of growing a garden. So I still have lots to kind of measure and figure out if that was just a freak season, but I have so much tomato product. So I don't have to grow quite as much this year, but I am planting 20 tomato plants, and these are gonna be my tomatoes. Down the center of this aisle, so this is, all of my surrounding garden beds are same width and distance. This one might be closer to 7 foot instead of the 6 foot spacing, but this is all spinach down the center of this. Oops. So we'll have lots of spinach in the spring And that's another thing, that it just takes a ton of spinach. If you're thinking like, when you go and buy the freezer packs of spinach, or a lot of spinach, spinach in a can, we don't can it, but we freeze it. It takes a lot of spinach. So in between the tomato plants, I'll have things like basil, maybe some fresh herbs, but this is the staple part of it. Okay, now this is the fun row, because I'm not quite sure how I'm going to do it all, but we're going to figure it out together. And one caveat, this garden plan never stays the same. I do a draft, I walk out to the garden for the first time, and I always change my mind on something, but not with respect to content of my garden, never changes. So this one will be potatoes on the outside wall. And I'm just deciding how I want to plant those. Do I want to do, because this bed is not a heavy roof stout bed. Do I want to do it in hay bales or straw bales, or do I want to do earth potatoes? Then I'm doing cabbage. And that's going to be staggered like every other plant. And then between the staggering will be broccoli. Okay, and then in front of the, oh no, whoops, I forgot to change my mind on this one already. Whoops. Okay, nope, scratch that, not spinach between the tomatoes. This is carrots. It was originally spinach, but I forgot to change my mind. Carrots down the center, because I did that last year, and I had my tomatoes and my carrots in between my tomatoes, and they did so well. Took a little bit longer because eventually during the summer they get a little shaded out, but by fall I had a phenomenal carrot crop in between my tomato rows. In front of the broccoli, and I am growing, this is half of the row will be celery. We really enjoyed growing our own celery and putting that up last year, and the other half will be spinach. Now I'm doing a lot of leafy greens up in my green stalks this year. Last year I didn't do any green stalk gardening. This year we are. Okay, what's next? Back wall. We are doing rotating 1 row peas, carrots, peas, carrots. That'll be fun, huh? Peas and carrots. You always get peas and carrots in a can. So it takes, guys, a lot of peas. I'll tell you how much all of this is going to be when I'm done. Okay, and let's go back up. And I do all of this in a massive spreadsheet. But for the purposes of sharing and showing you, we will stick to pen and paper. This bed was, these 2 beds last year were my 2 experiments doing straw bale gardening, and that was super fun. Don't know for sure if I'm doing straw bales or not. So right now these are not raised beds. It's just basically, it had been raised beds for years. They were rotten. I took them out, put the straw bales in place. So I'm not quite sure. Stick around, because we're going to do something to make these beds proper for growing in again this year. So I think I'm going to do, this one is zucchini plants. And I stick with one kind, just one kind of zucchini. And this is cucumbers. We have gone through quite a bit of our pickles. Last year, I did not have to pickle anything with respect to actual pickles because, and this will be up on a trellis, because the year before I had such a huge cucumber preserving. All right, these 2 beds, I believe, are both beets. Yes, so we're doing beets, and in my raised beds are 4 foot by 8 foot. So this is 8 foot and 4 foot, and we're doing beets in 3 rows, right? So if you think of it as 1, 2, 3 feet wide, this will all be beets. And then on this row, it's green beans. And same, green beans. And I am going to have a huge harvest with this many green beans. You wouldn't think it, just doing 1 square foot, 8 foot long, but wow, you can get a bumper crop of green beans, especially pole beans, and these will be arched trellises. That'll be beautiful right down the center of the garden. I'm gonna love it. I always like to change up my garden every single year and just make it look different and exciting, and it's just so fun. Okay, this one I'm excited about. Here, I have never grown sweet potatoes in a raised bed, so I want to try it this year. Why not? This is all sweet potatoes. All right, sweet potatoes. Final bed, can you guess what it is? If you know me, you know what it is. It's my onions. Onions, onions, onions. Delicious. So I know it's not to scale, just to give you an idea, all of my pathways are 2 foot wide, so 2 foot, whether you're going this direction or this direction. So they're all 2 feet in between. Perfect for my garden cart to get through. And I will say this row back here, maybe 18 inches, just because I keep creeping that back bed in a little too close. All right, so let's talk about amounts and quantities. How much can I get out of this space? And where I know facts and figures, I'll share them with respect to preserving your harvest. All right, so something I started, and this will come with lots of practice and keeping a good garden journal, is, okay, now how much seed do I need? And how much do I need to grow? This is gonna stink because it's not scaled to my phone, so I have to scroll back and forth. So beets, 432 beets. Think about that. That is 3 foot wide, 8 foot deep, and 2 beds of that. 432 beets I can fit in that space. I have not been, last year was my first successful year growing beets where I had enough to can myself. And what I had to can came from 1 bed. And I'm guessing I got probably, I'll have to go back and look. I don't think I did a video on it. I might have gotten 8 quarts of beets. So I would expect 16 quarts of beets, hopefully. Now, what's next? Broccoli. I am growing 16 broccoli plants. So this broccoli down here on this row, 16 broccoli plants. They'll be spaced probably 18 inches apart. Cabbage, 8 cabbages, both green and red. I will tell you, for good sized cabbage heads, I can get a ton of my pickled coleslaw from. So I'll be doing both pickled coleslaw and my pickled red cabbage. And we eat that very regularly. So I did not do any pickled coleslaw last year because the year prior I had tons. It's time for me to restock on that. Let's talk carrots. Anytime I see a big number on here, I know what it's for. 1,600 carrots, guys. I'm not kidding you, 1,600 carrots. I did a whole explanation on, I know that sounds astronomical. I'll link that video here. How many carrots does it take to grow to get enough to preserve? I have to assume half to 2/3 of that won't be what I consider canning quality, canning worthy carrots. They'll be great for storing for snack carrots. Maybe they'll be a little funky looking or not quite right, and I freeze a bunch for roasting carrots. Some will be so tiny it won't be worth it. All of those I save and I shred, and they become like my carrot cake and carrot muffin carrots. But in average, you could assume a third of that to closer to a half of that being canning worthy carrots. I have learned for the style of carrots I grow, it takes me about 15 carrots per quart jar. So those are things that I have learned, and then I can do my math and say, how much carrots do I need to put up? Alrighty, what's next? What's after carrots? Celery, I'm growing 5 celery heads. Last year I grew 6 and it was just a bit too much. So I'll just cut it back shyly to 5 celery plants. Cucumbers, we are growing 14 cucumber plants. And I picked a variety this year that I've never grown. I don't remember the name. I'll come back when I get my seed haul and do a video for you guys, but it is a variety that is all female flowers and doesn't require pollination. So I'm expecting a decent crop off of my 14 cucumbers. What is after cucumbers is corn. In this space right here, I will be growing 130 corn plants. Very similar to how I described carrots, I wouldn't expect every single ear to be perfect. And knowing my conditions on how successful I am and even successfully growing corn, and how little we eat, if I get like some kind of miracle and all 130 ears are perfect, I will have a lot of corn to give away. We just don't need that much, but let's go with it. Let's see what we end up with. I would say I would be happy if I could harvest for canning purposes 40 ears, and for, if I could successfully harvest 40 ears for canning, and I would say another 20 for freezing, and I just shuck them and then I cut them in half and we dump them in freezer bags and use it for like sheet pan meals or things like that. Okay, now let's talk green beans. How many green beans grow in a 1 foot space, 8 foot long? But I've got 4 of those, right? Green beans, green beans, green beans, and green beans. So let me tell you that number real quick. So it's right after my corn, 288 green bean plants. You guys, hopefully Todd is such a great editor that he can throw a clip in here. I use my square foot gardening tool, and it really maximizes the space of what you can grow with high intensity growing practices and when you're trying to just do a small footprint garden. So 288 green beans. Guys, I will have all the green beans my heart could desire. Maybe my goal would be another 30 quarts, if not 40 quarts of green beans. Okay, next on the list, I believe, is onions. Yes, so onions we are growing. I ordered 300 onions. 300 or 350 onion starts from Dixondale Farms. If you guys haven't ordered them yet, get your order in. One of my favorites was already out of stock when I placed my order a couple weeks ago. And so get your onion order in. That was 256 onions in my 2 raised beds. And then that's a lot of food, right? What's next? Peas. So I told you it takes a lot of peas. That's 522. Let me pull my sheet back. 522 pea plants in this back row. 2 rows, about 22 foot long.